Okay, we're still on the C5. We're waiting on the tires to come, so in between that and the tires getting put on the rims, we're going to start the brakes. You're going to need a few tools. 15 millimeter. I mean, if you're working on these cars, you should have a book, and then having it supported properly on jacks is essential. We have it on some Harbor Freight jacks. They're pretty good. But overall, the brake job is just the same as any other normal car, unless you have the Z06, and then those are a whole different type of brake system, but I think it's actually easier because they're on pins. But this is for your base model and any model that's non-Z06. You're just going to take these 15 millimeter caliper bolts out. Careful and don't drop the caliper. You can set it up here on top of the control arm. All right, just sit the caliper up there. The two caliper mounting bracket bolts to spindle are 21. You can take those off, and then you can remove the rotor so we can check and see if this thing's within spec. All right, we pulled the rotor off. It's a little dirty back there, but not really that bad for a 2004. I mean, really clean, decent looking. The brake pads weren't that bad. The rear ones were they were still serviceable, let's say that. But we already had the car up in the air, and if you have a Corvette or you've worked on a Corvette, you know that putting them up in the air is not the easiest because they don't have many jacking points. So it's just best to get all the maintenance done while it's in, you know, once a year or however much you do maintenance. But we got the rotor off, so on the inside here, it shows the minimum thickness is 30.3. You can see there, 30.3 millimeters. So you got to take a micrometer, and this is a 1 to 2 inch micrometer, so we got 1.25, a little over 1.25, so more than enough to take off. We'll take it off easily and gingerly. Don't take too much of a bite off, because then you'll end up with a rotor that's not serviceable. But we'll get this thing cut, clean everything up, and put fresh pads back on it. All right, we got it loaded up on the AMCO 4000. We did the scratch test. Everything looks good. We're going to go ahead and cut it. All right, we resurfaced the rotor. The target goal is 1.19. Pretty sure. Double check. So it's 1.193. We'll get this on there and we'll show you. We're at 1.22. We'll call it 1.22. So way over spec. This rotor lives to see another day. We'll do this to the other side, get everything back together. And just to confirm, this is a 1 to 2 inch micrometer. We are at 1.2. And let's see, 2 lines past, so the same exact thing, the caliper within 100,000ths of an inch. So 1.2, 1.19 and change is where you got to throw them away. So we still got plenty of brake material on there. Confirm both ways. That is the way you're supposed to do it. All right, it is extremely important that you clean everything up. We just used some soap and water and got most of the grime off, but this is the area you want to work in. Check your spindle and your hub bearing and all that stuff. Everything should rotate freely and generally noise free. One finger should spin this thing. It should not grind or anything. Clean this surface of all the rust. We wash it just down, just some dish soap. Got all the rust back here with a wire brush. Go ahead and mount it up and get the caliper bracket on. All right, we mounted the rotor with 2 lug nuts. You're probably not going to have this silver cap because that is not OEM. That's an aftermarket thing just to hide some rust. The main thing you want to do when you have this rotor on is just spin it. When it's bolted down, make sure you don't hear nothing. You want to get in new slide pin or new brake hardware. And you want to make sure these slide pins, top and bottom, slide in and out. If they don't slide in and out, take them apart. If they're rusted or you can't sand them down to where they're fitting smoothly, get a new set, or else your brakes will bind up and you will have problems. Next, just set the pads in there. Make sure when you put the caliper back down, you have that pad spring retainer in there. It just clips in the large side on the back. The small tab here in the front. Try and get a better focus. There you go. And if it's too wide and it's not going in, just bend the tabs in a little bit. Alright, once it's back together, you should be able to slide the caliper in and out pretty easily. That means everything is lubricated and good. Go inside the car and pump the brake pedal till it's hard before you drive it off. If you didn't do the other side already, repeat the other side, and that's it. Pretty simple, pretty quick. Alright, on to the rear brakes now on the C5. We have the lug nuts on here just to hold the rotor in place. The caliper slide pin bolts are 15 millimeters, and the caliper mounting bracket, if you're changing the rotor, is 21 millimeter. Remove these and set everything aside. Alright, once you remove the caliper and the caliper mounting bracket, you can go ahead and push that piston back in. We used a little tool right there. Get the rotor off. The minimum thickness is 24.5 millimeters. Make sure you mic it out and check it like we did for the fronts. We think we're going to be good, so we're going to cut that rotor and come back. Make sure all this area is cleaned up of rust and any type of oil or anything you got on there. Alright, after you get your new rotor or your machine rotor on, you can go ahead and set it on here with the lug nuts. We don't need to because we have this peeling chrome cover that's on there. But after that, you want to get the caliper bracket ready. Go ahead and put the new hardware in it. Go ahead and check the slide pins, clean them off, grease them, and put the two 21 millimeter bolts in the back with Loctite to 129 foot-pounds. That is the torque spec for a 2000, well, that is the torque spec for any C5 that has sliding calipers. Alright, once you have the caliper mounting bracket mounted, make sure you have your pad locating spring back there that helps keeps the pads in position. When we took it apart, it did not have this in there, so make sure that that's in there. Set that on there, and it's 30 foot-pounds for these little caliper bolts. Loctite those as well. Make sure you pump your brakes before you take off. And that's it. Simple, easy. Thanks for watching.